The sun was sinking behind the far hills when Ethan Ward finished tying the last rope on the rail fence. His ranch stretched wide across the quiet valley, with a narrow creek running down the center and tall cottonwood trees standing like watchmen on both sides. Ethan lived alone in a small log cabin that he had built with his own hands. Life on the frontier was not easy, but it was peaceful, and he had made his peace with solitude. He worked hard every day, respected his neighbors, and kept to himself unless someone needed help. That evening, as he walked back toward the cabin, he noticed a light cloud of dust rising on the main road that led to town. It was not natural dust carried by the wind. It was the kind that followed wheels and hooves. Ethan stopped, wiped sweat from his brow, and watched carefully. Within a few moments, he could see the shape of a stagecoach coming into view. The horses were moving slower than usual, and the coach looked worn from long travel. Stagecoaches did not usually arrive this late, and rarely did they come during the cold season. Curious but calm, Ethan leaned on the fence and waited as the coach rolled into the town station about half a mile away. He almost ignored it, but something inside him felt strange, like the air itself had changed direction. He shook off the thought, washed up at the pump outside his cabin, and prepared to head home for supper. But before he could enter his cabin, he heard a faint shout from the distance. It sounded like someone calling out, but not in trouble, more like someone asking where to go. Ethan turned and saw a small group of townsfolk walking toward the station, curious about the late arrival. Without knowing why, Ethan felt drawn to the scene. He set aside his plans for supper, took his hat, and walked toward town. When he reached the station, a small crowd had already gathered, whispering softly, "She's here for Tom Bricker." Someone said, "He should have been here by now." Another voice replied. Ethan frowned. Tom Bricker was his neighbor man who lived 2 miles down the road. Tom was known for being quick with decisions, and even quicker with mistakes. But he had told a few people that he had arranged for a mail-order bride. Nobody had taken it too seriously. People talked, but no one believed Tom was truly prepared to take responsibility for a new life with someone he barely knew. Ethan stepped closer. Standing near the edge of the station platform was a young woman holding a single suitcase. Her dress was neat but simple, dusted from the long journey. She had soft brown hair braided to one side and gentle eyes that carried both hope and worry. She looked tired, as if she'd been traveling for many days. The stagecoach driver cleared his throat and said, "Ma'am, this is the end of the line. I hope your husband to-be is here." The woman nodded politely, trying to smile, though the cold wind made her tremble. Ethan watched quietly as she looked around, scanning every face. But Tom Bricker was nowhere in sight. Minutes passed. The townsfolk drifted away, muttering about Tom's usual careless nature. The sky grew darker. Lamps were lit around the station. Yet still, the young woman stood there alone, gripping her suitcase. Ethan felt a deep pull of concern in his chest. He did not know her, but he could see that she had no idea what to do next. A local storekeeper, Mr. Jacobs, stepped forward and asked, "Ma'am, what's your name?" "My name is Clara Hayes," she answered softly. "Tom Bricker wrote to me. He asked me to come here. He said he would be waiting at the station." Mr. Jacobs frowned. "Tom left town this morning, packed his things, and said he had changed his mind." Clara blinked in shock. She was silent for several seconds, as if her mind was trying to wrap around the words. "He changed his mind?" she repeated, her voice almost breaking. Ethan could see her eyes glisten. She looked down, not wanting anyone to see her disappointment. She had traveled all the way across the country, believing she had a guaranteed future. But now she stood in a strange land with no family, no job, and no home. The stagecoach driver tipped his hat. "I'm sorry, miss, but I have to move on. Take care." With that, the coach rolled away, leaving Clara standing alone in the quiet evening. Some people whispered out of pity, but none stepped forward to help. Most of them had homes to return to and families waiting. They weren't unkind. They were simply unsure of what they should do. Ethan felt a heavy silence around him. He had seen lonely people before, but this was different. Clara had placed her entire future on a promise that had vanished. Finally, Ethan stepped closer. "Ma'am," he said gently. "I'm Ethan Ward. I live near Tom's place." Clara looked up slowly, her eyes filled with worry. "Do you know where he is?" Ethan shook his head. "He left early." "No one knew you were arriving today?" Clara swallowed hard and nodded. "I see." There was no anger in her voice, only quiet acceptance, as if she had been prepared for life to be difficult. Ethan glanced at the darkening sky. The cold was getting stronger. Clara had only a thin shawl wrapped around her. "You can't stay out here," he said calmly. "There's no inn in town with a room available tonight. If you'd like, you can rest at my cabin until we figure out a proper plan tomorrow." Clara hesitated. "I don't want to trouble anyone." "It's no trouble," Ethan replied. "You shouldn't be alone on a cold night after such a long journey." Mr. Jacobs, standing nearby, nodded. "Ethan is a good man, miss. You'll be safe there." Clara finally gave a small nod. "Thank you. I appreciate your kindness." Ethan took her suitcase. It was surprisingly light, guided her toward the road leading to his ranch. The walk was quiet. The wind rustled through the tall grass. The sky was deep blue, scattered with stars. Clara walked slowly beside him, trying not to show how tired she really was. After a while, Ethan broke the silence. "How long have you been traveling?" "Almost 10 days," Clara answered. "Train, then coach. I thought I would be starting a new life when I arrived." Ethan nodded. "I'm sorry things turned out this way." Clara managed a soft smile. "It's not your fault. You didn't promise me anything." Ethan admired her strength. Even in disappointment, she was graceful. When they reached his cabin, Ethan opened the door and lit a lamp. Warm golden light filled the cozy room. The cabin had a small kitchen area, a table, a cast iron stove, and a bunk in the corner where Ethan slept. There was a second room with a bed he kept for occasional visitors. "You can stay in the guest room," he said. "It's simple, but it's warm." Clara walked inside slowly, her eyes taking in the tidy space. "It's lovely," she said honestly. "Thank you." Ethan set her suitcase down. "There's fresh water in the jug. I'll prepare a bit of supper. You can rest if you want." Clara looked at him with quiet gratitude. "I think I'll wash up first. Thank you for everything." While she settled in the small room, Ethan heated a pot of soup on the stove. He moved quietly, not wanting to disturb her. He had taken in travelers before, never someone whose future had fallen apart in a single moment. When Clara returned, she looked washed and a bit more relaxed. She sat at the table and Ethan placed a bowl of warm soup in front of her. "It's simple," he said. "It's perfect," she replied, her voice warm. They ate in gentle silence. Clara finished her bowl slowly, enjoying the warmth. Ethan watched her subtly, noticing how tired she seemed. "You should rest," he said, when she tried to help with dishes. "You traveled far." "The chores can wait." Clara nodded. "Thank you again, truly." Ethan opened the door to the guest room for her. Inside was a small bed, a quilt, and a lantern on a wooden shelf. "If you need anything, just call," he said. Clara looked at him with calm sincerity. "I feel safe here. Good night, Mr. Ward. Good night, Miss Hayes." When she closed the door, Ethan stood there for a moment. Something about her presence felt gentle, like a soft light in his quiet life. He wasn't looking for company, and he certainly wasn't expecting this kind of situation. But he knew one thing: no decent person deserved to be left. Alone on a cold night with nowhere to go, he stepped outside for a moment and looked at the starry sky. The wind blew softly, carrying the scent of pine and distant rain. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring for Clara, but he made one private promise to himself: as long as she stayed under his roof, he would treat her with respect, protect her from worry, and make sure she never felt abandoned again. Inside the cabin, Clara lay on the small bed, staring at the ceiling. She felt exhaustion, sadness, and relief all at once. But she also felt something unexpected: hope. She was far from home. But for the first time in many days, she felt safe, and that simple feeling changed everything. Morning sunlight slipped through the small wooden window of Ethan's cabin, warming the room with a soft golden glow. Clara Hayes woke slowly, her eyes adjusting to the peaceful quiet. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then she remembered the long journey, the empty station, Tom Bricker's absence, and Ethan Ward's calm voice offering her shelter. But now, lying in a warm bed with the scent of fresh wood around her, she felt something new: safety. She stretched her tired arms and sat up. The quilt covering her was thick and warm, stitched with simple patterns. She touched it gently, wondering who had made it. Everything in the cabin felt humble, but full of care. Outside, she heard the soft clucking of chickens, the rhythmic sound of an axe splitting firewood, and the gentle breeze moving through the trees. Clara stood, straightened her dress, and opened the door quietly. Ethan was already outside, splitting wood near the stack beside the cabin. He paused when he saw her step out. "Morning, Miss Hayes," he said kindly. "Hope you slept well?" Clara smiled shyly. "I slept more peacefully than I have in days." "Thank you," Ethan nodded with quiet satisfaction. "There's fresh water on the table if you want to wash up. Breakfast is simple, but it will be ready soon." Clara felt a flutter of gratitude. She had expected him to treat her like a burden, but instead, he treated her with steady respect. She washed, brushed her hair, and helped set the table even though Ethan politely insisted she didn't need to. They sat across from each other as Ethan placed 2 plates of warm cornbread and eggs on the table. "It's not much," he said. "It's more kindness than I expected today," she replied gently. After breakfast, Ethan put on his hat. "I'll check on the livestock and repair a broken fence post. If you want to rest, feel free." Clara hesitated. "May I help with something?" "I don't want to sit idle." Ethan looked surprised but pleased. "If you feel up to it, you can gather eggs or sweep the porch." "Only if you want to." Clara nodded. "I want to. It makes me feel useful." The day unfolded slowly and warmly. Clara swept the porch, gathered eggs from the chicken coop, and boiled water for laundry. She moved carefully, wanting to be respectful of Ethan's home. Ethan repaired fence posts, fed the horses, and stopped by occasionally to make sure she wasn't overworking herself. Every time their eyes met, there was a sense of understanding, quiet, gentle, unspoken. By noon, clouds gathered overhead. A cool breeze swept across the ranch. Ethan came in, brushing dust off his hands. "You should come inside. Might rain soon." Clara followed him in, and he lit a lamp while she prepared tea. They sat at the small table, listening to the soft rumble of distant thunder. Clara wrapped her hands around the warm cup. "I am sorry if my being here causes trouble for you," she said softly. Ethan shook his head. "You're not causing trouble. You arrived here because someone else broke a promise. That's not your fault." Clara lowered her gaze. "Tom wrote kind letters. He said he needed a partner. He made me believe I was needed. I wanted a stable life after losing my family. I thought I was making a wise decision." Ethan listened carefully. "You made a brave decision. Traveling so far alone, that takes strength." Clara looked up, surprised by the respect in his voice. Most people she had met treated mail-order brides like items, not people. But Ethan spoke to her like she mattered. Rain began to fall lightly, tapping on the roof. Clara felt comfortable in the quiet warmth of the cabin. After a while, she spoke again. "What kind of man is Tom Bricker? Did he really not know I was coming?" Ethan exhaled slowly. "Tom is unpredictable. He wants things until they require responsibility. Then he changes his mind. But no one expected him to leave like that." Clara looked down. "I see." Ethan watched her carefully. "If he had seen you standing there the way I saw you, maybe he would have made a different choice." Clara gave a small smile. "You are kind, Mr. Ward." Ethan shifted slightly, embarrassed by the praise. "Just doing what's right." As the rain fell harder, Clara stood and looked out the window. "Your ranch is beautiful," she said softly. "It's simple," Ethan replied. "But it's home." Clara nodded. A simple home is still a blessing. Something about her tone made Ethan realize how deep her loneliness had been. She wasn't just abandoned at the station, she had been carrying a heavy emptiness long before that. The storm passed by late afternoon. Ethan went outside to check the animals, and Clara followed him. She held her skirt carefully to avoid mud as she watched him work. "You do everything alone?" she asked. "For the most part," Ethan said. "Neighbors help when needed, but I manage fine." Clara stepped closer to the fence. "It must get lonely." Ethan shrugged. "I got used to it." Clara thought about that. Being used to loneliness didn't mean a person liked it. Over the next few days, the judge in town sent word that Clara should stay temporarily at Ethan's ranch until the situation was reviewed. Since Tom had left, the town needed time to decide what steps to take. Clara accepted the arrangement with gratitude. Ethan made sure she felt comfortable without making her feel like a burden. She helped with small tasks, cooking simple meals, mending shirts, sweeping floors, feeding chickens. Ethan never asked her to do anything, but she wanted to contribute. Their daily rhythm became natural. Ethan would work outside, and Clara would handle small chores indoors. At sunset, they would sit on the porch with cups of tea. Watching the golden colors fall over the valley, Ethan found himself looking forward to those moments more than he expected. One afternoon, Clara joined him to tend the horses. She stood beside the gray mare, stroking its mane gently. "She's gentle," Clara said. Ethan nodded. "Her name is Willow." Clara smiled. "That's a beautiful name." The horse nuzzled Clara's shoulder, and Ethan watched her laugh softly, a sound he had not heard from her before. It was light, warm, and full of life. He found himself smiling without thinking. Later, they rode together along the creek. Clara sat behind Ethan on the saddle, holding onto the edge of his coat for balance. The breeze carried her soft breath, and Ethan felt her calm presence like a quiet warmth. They talked about simple Thingstown stories, whether their past lives. Clara shared memories of her parents who had passed away. Ethan listened with deep respect. She told him about working in a small dress shop, dreaming of adventure, wanting a place to belong. Ethan shared stories of ranch life, his childhood, and how he built his cabin. The conversation felt natural, like two people learning each other's hearts without trying. When they returned, Clara helped him unsaddle the horse. She moved with grace and care, and Ethan admired her gentle strength as the sun set. They sat on the porch, a soft breeze brushing past. "Do you regret coming here?" Ethan asked. Clara thought for a long moment. "At first, yes. When I stood at the station and realized no one was waiting, I felt foolish. But now, I don't know. Things feel different." Ethan nodded. "Sometimes, unexpected paths lead to better places." Clara looked at him, her eyes warm. "Do you really believe that?" Ethan met her gaze. "I do." There was a silence between them, soft, comforting, not awkward. They both felt something changing, though neither dared name it. Meanwhile, the town had begun whispering. Some people said Ethan should marry Clara since she was staying with him. Others claimed Clara should be sent back east, but Ethan never let such talk reach her ears. He protected her from the weight of gossip. One night, the sky turned dark with heavy clouds. A winter storm rolled across the land. Wind howled outside, shaking the windows of the cabin. Ethan added more logs to the fire, while Clara watched him quietly. "You can sit closer to the fire," he told her. "It's colder tonight." Clara moved her chair a little nearer. Ethan handed her a thicker blanket. She wrapped it around herself, grateful for his thoughtfulness. As the storm raged outside, they talked for hours. Clara told him about the letters Tom had written, promises, hopes, future plans that now seemed meaningless. Ethan listened patiently, never judging her for trusting the wrong person. "You deserved honesty," he said firmly. "Not empty words." Clara nodded, touched by his sincerity. She had never met a man who spoke with such calm conviction. When the fire burned low and the wind softened, Clara stood to return to her room. "Good night, Mr. Ward," she said gently. "Thank you for making me feel safe." Ah! Ethan watched her walk away, the blanket still wrapped around her shoulders. "Good night, Miss Hayes," he replied. After she closed the door, Ethan sat quietly by the dying fire. He felt a strange warmth in his chest. Not just kindness, but something deeper forming slowly, like a seed taking root. He didn't plan for it. He didn't expect it. But Clara Hayes had brought light into a cabin that had been quiet for too long, and he realized, as he watched the flames flicker, that he didn't want that light to fade. Morning sunlight touched the valley gently, spreading soft gold across the open fields. Weeks had passed since Clara Hayes arrived at Ethan Ward's ranch, weeks filled with quiet chores. Warm meals, shared sunsets, and a calm understanding that grew naturally between them. Yet, despite the peace inside the cabin, both Ethan and Clara knew something important was approaching. The town judge's final decision about Clara's future. Clara stood near the porch rail that morning, her eyes on the distant hills. The breeze brushed her hair back, and she held a small cup of tea between her hands. It had become her habit, stepping outside early, breathing in the cool air, and letting silence settle her heart. Ethan stepped out of the barn and walked toward her. "You're up early," he said softly. Clara smiled. "The morning air helps me think." Ethan nodded. "It's a good way to start the day." For a moment, they stood side by side, watching the sun rise over the tall grass. Clara took a slow breath. "The judge said he might arrive today." Ethan looked at her carefully. "Are you nervous?" Clara hesitated. "Not nervous. Just uncertain. My life has changed so much in such a short time. I don't know what the future holds." Ethan understood. She had journeyed across the country expecting one path, only to find it closed. He admired her strength more than ever. "I'll stand with you," he said gently. "Whatever the judge decides." Clara glanced at him with warm eyes. "Thank you, Mr. Ward." After breakfast, Clara helped with small chores, folding laundry, feeding chickens, boiling water for tea. Ethan worked outside, checking the fences and preparing feed for the animals. Their movements were calm and familiar, reflecting how easily they had fallen into a shared routine. By noon, a rider appeared on the road, tall man in a brown coat, carrying a leather satchel. Clara saw him first. "It's the judge," she whispered. Ethan wiped his hands on a cloth and stepped beside her. "Let's greet him together." Judge Samuel Burke dismounted slowly and tied his horse to the post. He was a fair, thoughtful man, known for treating people with respect. "Good afternoon, Ethan," he said. Then, turning to Clara, "Miss Hayes." Clara nodded politely. "Good afternoon, sir." "Ah!" The judge took off his hat and stepped onto the porch. "I hope you've been settling in well," Clara answered truthfully. "Mr. Ward has been very kind." Ethan cleared his throat. "She has worked hard and caused no trouble." The judge smiled. "I expected nothing less." He opened his satchel and pulled out a few papers. "I've reviewed your situation, Miss Hayes. Tom Bricker abandoned his agreement. He left town without notice, and there is no legal bond between you and him." Clara listened quietly, her hands clasped together. "You are free," the judge continued. "Free to choose where you want to live, free to build your own path. You may return east if you wish, or you may stay here in this town and find honest work. The choice is yours." Clara exhaled slowly, feeling a weight lift off her shoulders. The uncertainty that had pressed on her since she stepped off the stagecoach finally loosened. "Thank you, Judge Burke," she said softly. "Your words mean more than you know." The judge nodded. "If you need help finding a place to stay or work, I can assist. But I see you have found support here already." Clara glanced at Ethan, who stood steady beside her. The judge packed his papers back into the satchel. "If you decide to stay in this town, you will be welcomed. If you choose another path, may it bring you peace." After a few more polite words, the judge rode away. Leaving the two of them standing on the porch, Clara looked down at her hands. "I am free," she murmured, almost in disbelief. "Free to choose anything." Ethan's voice was calm. "What do you want to do?" Clara took a long breath, her eyes drifting toward the fields she had come to love, the rustling grass, the quiet creek, the gentle sway of cottonwood trees. She looked at Ethan, who had given her shelter, safety, and respect without ever asking for anything in return. "I want to stay," she said softly. "If I am welcome, Ethan felt something warm move through his chest. "You are welcome," he said firmly. "For as long as you choose to stay." Clara's smile was small, but full of meaning. She felt steadier now, no longer lost. As days turned into weeks, Clara settled into life on the ranch. She cooked meals with more confidence, mended clothing with care, and learned how to saddle the horses with Ethan's gentle guidance. Every day brought new moments of ease between them, shared laughter, quiet conversations, soft glances when one thought the other wasn't looking. Ethan noticed the changes growing inside himself too. He had lived alone for so long that he had forgotten what it felt like to have someone waiting at the table, someone walking beside him to the barn, someone humming a tune while sweeping the porch. Clara brought peace into his life, warm, steady presence that made his cabin feel less like a shelter and more like a home. Yet, despite the growing bond, Ethan kept his feelings guarded. He was afraid of appearing selfish. Clara deserved freedom, not pressure. He wanted her to choose him only if she truly wanted to. Clara sensed his quiet caution. She admired it. Ethan gave her space to breathe, time to heal, respect she had rarely received from anyone else. One afternoon, Clara was hanging laundry behind the cabin when she heard footsteps. She turned to see Ethan carrying a bucket of water. "Let me help with that," he said. Clara smiled. "I can manage." Ethan stood beside her, watching as she shook out a clean shirt and pinned it to the line. "You've done so much here," he said quietly. "I want you to know. You don't have to work this hard to earn your place." Clara paused, her heart softening. "I'm not doing it to earn a place," she said. "I'm doing it because I care about this home, and I care about you." Ethan froze for a moment. The words were gentle, but they hit him like sunlight breaking through clouds. "Clara," he began, his voice low. She turned toward him fully, her expression calm but full of emotion. "You took me in when I had nowhere to go. You treated me with dignity when I felt small. You gave me safety without asking for anything. I want to stay, Ethan. Not because I must, because I want to." Ethan felt his heart settle, slow and sure. "I was afraid to say anything," he admitted. "I didn't want to make you feel trapped." Clara shook her head. "You never trapped me. You freed me." For the first time since she arrived, Ethan let his guard fall completely. He stepped closer, his voice steady and sincere. "Clara, you have become important to me, more important than I ever expected. If you choose to build a life here with me, I would be honored." Clara felt her eyes warm with joy. "I would like that more than anything." Ethan breathed deeply, relief flowing through him. "Then we'll take it slow," he said. "Whatever pace you want." Clara nodded. "Slow is perfect." They stood together in the soft afternoon light, the laundry swaying gently behind them. It was a simple moment, yet it held the weight of a promise. Word spread quietly through town. Some neighbors were surprised, but most were pleased. They had watched Ethan live alone for years, and now they saw him walking beside Clara at the store, helping her carry supplies. Smiling more often than anyone had seen before, people whispered kindly, "She's good for him. He seems happier." They balance each other well. Ethan and Clara didn't rush. They spent their days working side by side and their evenings talking by lamplight. As spring arrived, the ranch bloomed with new life calves, born in the north pasture. Wildflowers covering the hills, fresh leaves on the trees. One quiet morning, Ethan stood by the creek repairing a small bridge. Clara walked toward him with a basket of bread she had baked. "You've been working since sunrise," she said gently. "Take a break." Ethan accepted the bread and sat beside her on the creek bank. The water made a soft, calming sound as it flowed over smooth stones. "Clara," he began softly, "I've been thinking. The judge said you're free to build any life you want. If you choose, if it feels right, I would like to build that life with you officially." Clara smiled warmly. "You mean marriage?" Ethan nodded, his expression open and sincere. "Only if you want it. Only if you feel ready." Clara reached out and touched his hand gently. "Ethan, I knew weeks ago. I just waited for you to say the words." Ethan felt a deep peace settle in his chest. Then let's do it. A small ceremony. Nothing grand. Clara laughed softly. A small ceremony is perfect. A few weeks later, neighbors gathered outside the cabin. Wildflowers decorated the porch, and the air smelled fresh and sweet. The judge stood before them with a gentle smile. Clara wore a simple cream-colored dress she had sewn herself. Ethan wore his best shirt and boots. They stood side by side, hands clasped. The ceremony was short, warm, and full of quiet joy. When the judge announced them husband and wife, Clara felt tears of happiness gather in her eyes. Ethan squeezed her hand gently, grounding her in his calm strength. Afterward, neighbors shared bread, tea, and kind words. The sun dipped low as the celebration faded, leaving Ethan and Clara standing on their porch. Watching the sky turn golden, this cabin feels different now, Clara said softly. Ethan looked at her with warm eyes. Feels like home. Clara leaned her head against his shoulder. It is home. And I am grateful every day that you didn't leave me standing alone at that station. Ethan wrapped an arm around her gently. I'm grateful, too, that you trusted me. That you stayed. Together, they watched the last rays of sunlight fade behind the hills. Clara had arrived in the valley abandoned and uncertain. But she found respect, companionship, and love in the most unexpected place, in a quiet cowboy.